Hello everybody, welcome back to the channel. How you all doing? Off the underside. We've got another guest tonight. It's ex-Rangers, Dundee, Cardiff and Scottish international, Gavin Rae. Gavin, how are you doing, pal?
I'm good, thank you. Thanks.
Good, mate. It's really appreciate you coming on, mate. I know, taking a wee bit of time out your day and that, so thanks very much.
No problem at all.
Right, mate, so like we always do, take us back to the very start, please, when you were a young kid and you were playing football and you realised you had a bit of talent and you wanted to be a player.
Well, it took a while to get going, to be honest. I was probably a late developer compared to a lot of my peers growing up in Aberdeen. All of my friends were like sort of signed up with S forms with Aberdeen, Dundee United, Rangers, Celtic, Man United, Chelsea. So we had a really good group, but I was probably one of the later ones to develop. So I always thought, I had a little bit of talent, but not compared to my peers at that point. It sort of took me a bit to get going. And once I was probably a little bit older, so maybe about 16, 17, I started to really understand and think that I might have an outside chance, basically.
You made it to Dundee, but how did that come about?
So it was a scout from Aberdeen. Basically, there was a cup final up in Aberdeen. Myself and Jerry O'Driscoll, who signed for Dundee at the same time, we were playing against each other in this cup final, and the scout had recommended us to them. And then, so actually, Jim Duffy came up and actually watched the game. So Jim Duffy was the Dundee first team manager. Came up and watched the game. They'd been towards the end of the season for Dundee at that point. And he came and watched the game, which is kind of unheard of. But he'd obviously been recommended, both myself and Jerry, opposite teams. So he thought, why not? I'll come up and watch a game. And the game went pretty well. I can't remember the score. I can't remember if we won or if Jerry's team won. But basically, after that, he invited us down to Dundee to chat to him, basically, and sign for the YTS program at that point. So sort of went from nowhere to basically straight into YTS, which was a really different path to a lot of my friends and a lot of the peers who'd played, and been signed S form, played with Scotland, all different countries, growing up. I had never had any of that, and then sort of just got straight into the YTS program, which was obviously at that point I was delighted with, but it was obviously I wasn't expecting it, and it was sort of a last minute thing.
And how did you find that level then when you were playing alongside those kind of other boys your age at that point?
Difficult, to be honest. So my first year YTS, when I went down to Dundee, it's crazy. Like, I've lived all over the world now, but even when I was younger, obviously not that mature, I'd went to Dundee from Aberdeen, which is not that far. But I used to get homesick for Aberdeen, but it's probably just as I say, I wasn't that mature. And then you've got boys coming in from Dundee, boys coming in from the West of Scotland, who were way more confident in their ability and just in themselves at that point than what I was. And getting up to speed of training every day, I really struggled that first year. It was really tough. That first year. I didn't play much. And it wasn't towards the end of the season, I started sort of getting a bit of rhythm going. I was getting games. I scored a couple of goals towards the end as a midfielder. But it was a tough year, that first year, for sure.
So what year was that then? Was that 90?
Oh, good question. That'd have been probably 96, 97 maybe. YTS, yeah. So yeah, about 97 maybe.
So when did you break into the first team then? Was that 1990? Was that 97 then?
Basically the year later. So I got kept on at the end of the season, which just gave me the biggest confidence boost ever. And then the next season, I was playing all the YTS games, all the youth team games, all the reserve games, and I played first team. So I would have been I think I was 17 when I made my debut. And it just shows you just a bit of confidence from the coaching staff in me, and it just sort of all coming together and clicking. And then so it was the next year I basically made my debut for the first team towards the end of the season.
Was Jim Duffy still in charge when you got your debut?
Yeah, he was. So I played, I think my first game was at Firhill when Hamilton were still playing out of Firhill, and played about 20 minutes towards the end. And then the next would have been in the next game was at home at Dens, and I actually made my starting debut, left back, and Jim Duffy was actually still playing, so he was a player manager at that point. He actually played centre back, and I played left back, so that was obviously towards the end of his career and towards the start of mine. But just being around him and obviously the manager and him playing, he was a top player. It was just good to be around.
No pressure there then, man. The manager's playing right alongside you. It must have been brutal.
It was, but you know what? He was actually good. He was actually good because Duff's a good talker, really good on the pitch. He was a top player, Duff. So it sort of made my life a bit easier, and I could just sort of go and enjoy the game. And when you're young, you don't even think about it. You just crack on and just get on with it. So it was good fun.
How was it winning the league in your first full professional season? That must have been some crazy feeling.
It was, although it's strange because I didn't play maybe as much as what I would have liked, but I was still sort of learning my trade and I was in and around it. I played a few games, but you probably just think at that age because you're inexperienced and you don't really understand, but just think that it was normal. Obviously, the longer you go in your career, you realise it's not normal. So I didn't really get a chance to savour it maybe when I was just coming through because I was just young, but. It was an amazing experience being around that team and obviously getting promotion to the Premier League was great. But yeah, you probably take it for granted because you just don't understand how hard it is to do so.
Definitely.
We have to talk about the Ivano Bonetti years, mate, because honestly, they were amazing. Like I loved that team. You know what I mean? Obviously, you look back at it. What I really loved about that team though was like you had guys like Nemzadze, stuff like that, Kenija, Caballero, stuff like that. But what I loved in the centre part was a guy like yourself. You know, you had big Lee Wilkie at the back and stuff like that, and it was, you had that Scottish core in there alongside all these kind of players, and it was just a really exciting time for Scottish football.
It was amazing times, in terms of like it was strange when they first come in. It was so different to what we'd been used to. I'd had obviously Duff, and then John McCormack was the manager, and then Jockey Scott, and then so it was all pretty, familiar in terms of Scottish culture and how we approach training and games. And then the Benettis came in, and it was totally different. I think the year before the Benettis came in, I played every single game in the Premier League for Dundee. Apart from one, I think I missed with injury. I had a sore back up at Aberdeen, but apart from that, played every minute of every Premier League game. And then the Benettis came in, obviously an influx of loads of different players and nationalities. And then I was sort of cast to the side, so it was like a brand new start. So you sort of have to fight your corner again and get back into it. But I was so far out of the picture, I wasn't even on the bench in the first few games. It was I went from playing every game, every minute, to not even being on the bench. So it was like a massive shock, and you just got to fight your way back. But you sort of, you're open to it. You fight your corner, get back into it. I think Patricio Bailio, God rest him, had been sent off at St Mirren, and I'd got a chance to come on maybe 10 minutes. And he obviously missed the next game, and that's why I played the next game. And then pretty much was never out of the team after that for the whole time they were there. So I went from being an outcast to being one of his favourite players. But there were some amazing characters, amazing players there at the same time. But like you say, there was a Scottish core in the team. They had Rab Douglas in goal, Barry Smith, Stephen Tweed, myself, Lee Wilkie, Willie Faulkner, Stephen Milne. There was a pure Scottish core within the team, which actually made it work really well. Complemented with some amazing flair players who were new to the club and new to the league. But I think all that combined made it some of the most enjoyable football I played in my whole career. To be honest, played with some amazing players, flair players. Next to Georgie Nemzadze, who was a ridiculous player, and it was really good fun. The training was a little bit different, where it wasn't as enjoyable. The training, it was a lot more tactical, a lot more strength stuff. But then the Saturdays, the actual games were probably one of the most enjoyable times in my career. But the training wasn't so much. But then you take that because the games are so enjoyable.
Aye.
What was Benetti like though? Was he a bit of a character and stuff like that? Because the media kind of portray him as being like that, but was he really like that?
He was definitely a bit outlandish. He was, full of his own confidence. But it was him and his brother both tactically very, very good. When I look back over my career and like how much I learned from them at that point in terms of how to play football and obviously their culture and how they play football in Italy and what they brought to us. It was incredible in terms of being well drilled for a Saturday where you just knew exactly what you had to do because it had been so well drilled into you. It was it could be repetitive and a bit monotonous on a weekday, but you come Saturday, you just knew everyone knew the role, and it just become we were able to entertain the crowd and the fans because we knew exactly what our role was, and it was so much fun to be involved in. And they were definitely, as I say, like quite not loud, but definitely different characters than what we'd been used to. Dario, his brother, so Ivano's brother, took a lot of the training. He was like the tactical brains behind it, and Ivano was like the manager who sort of dealt with the players and dealt with the whole club stuff and the press and stuff. So they had a really good balance, and I grew to really enjoy working with them, and they were brilliant for me in the end. They pushed me on, and I really enjoyed working with them.
Just before we move on for that, but I was reading earlier on that he's never actually went on to manage anybody else ever again.
It's actually crazy that when you think about it, because I know it was a strange time because obviously they were bringing lots of players in, and the club obviously had a difficult time after that. But in terms of like what they did and what they brought, I mean, if you ask any fans at Dundee, like how enjoyable that time was and going to watch your team, they would have loved it because it was so enjoyable because the way the team played and the players we had. But obviously it was detrimental to the club in the long term. But no, great memories to look back on for sure. But I'm surprised they never went on and done anything else because, like Dario, for sure was an incredible tactician, no doubt.
One of those great memories must have been the cup final against Rangers.
Yep.
How was that being in your first major tournament final?
Yeah, no, amazing. Like I've still got really fond memories, although obviously we didn't win. But to go with the club that started as YTS and bring them, along with my teammates to the final and play in the finals. You grow up as a kid watching the Scottish Cup final, FA Cup final, and to get the chance to play in it for the club that I started at YTS was just an amazing occasion. Boiling hot day. We actually played well in the day. We didn't win it. So there's obviously a tinge of frustration there looking back on it, but I'm still proud of what we've done as a club to get there and the whole, the journey to it. So, yeah, nothing but good memories apart from obviously the result. But yeah, no, it was an amazing occasion for me. I was lucky. I played in the Youth Cup final for Dundee and then went on to play in the Scottish Cup final for them as well. So, a massive part of my career, there's no doubt.
Definitely. I was just thinking that it could have been emotional because obviously, like you said, it took you all the way through and stuff like that. So I can imagine how you felt that day.
Yeah, that was amazing. Yeah, especially on all your family and that. All my family was there. They brought a bus down and that. It was just incredible. Yeah.
Well, I was at that game because it was Big Amo and Newman's last game as well, so it was emotional.
That's right, yeah. And
emotional for different reasons for you, Dave.
Yeah, no, totally. And obviously, it was they'd won the league before the week before. They'd done the double, so they're going for the treble, wasn't it? So it was like, when I hear the stories of them all being out the whole week on the lash because obviously they'd won the league and going for the treble is frustrating because we played well in the day, but we just didn't get the luck, I suppose, in the day. And Rangers were out in the feet in that day, and but again, that's where big characters come in, and Amoruso, he done the job, and frustration from my point looking back, but that's football.
So in 2004, mate, Alec McLeish came calling. You end up moving on to Rangers. How did that come about, mate? And how were you feeling at that point?
I mean, there was always like rumours of Rangers being interested, and then obviously Dundee went through administration, so terrible time. You know, I'd lost lots of friends who I grew up with and who'd been at the club for years. Within a day, they were all sort of gone from the club, released. I was kept on because I'd have been, 23, 24 at that point, and viewed as an asset. I was playing for Scotland, I was playing for Dundee every week in the Prem. I think I had maybe 9 months left of my contract, so I was kept on with a view of looking to sell in January, and then luckily Alex McLeish came in at Rangers, so that's kind of how it came about. It was kind of a bit of a whirlwind, even though there'd been interest. I mean, in terms of how quickly it progressed, as soon as January the transfer window opened, was a bit of a shock. But I think the week before, I think Rangers had a few injuries, so I think Alex was looking to push it forward as quick as possible. And I spoke to him, and he obviously was keen to get us in, and then basically it was done. It was done really quickly.
Your debut, it was against Celtic, and it was also, it wasn't the best debut in the world. It was cut a wee bit short. No,
Yeah.
but you mentally, how did you mentally come back from that to later on captain Rangers at one point?
It was a tough time, you know. Like I'd obviously looking to, you know, have a successful career at Rangers. You know, I was at Dundee for, I think it was 8 to 10 years, and you get an opportunity to move to a huge club like Rangers, and then obviously, so I was delighted with that. But then it just didn't really pan out that way, and obviously the debut got cut short, and it was sort of an indication of what was to come. I came back I had injured my hamstring in that game, came back, and then I played like 11 games. It was going well, scored a couple of goals, and then I'd done my knee, so I was out for a long time after that. It's actually the longest period out of my career, and it was frustrating because obviously I'm at a beautiful training ground with amazing players, just not getting to play. So it was all about rehab, and you just got to be resilient. You got to be strong. So managed to get through it, got back in the team, and then obviously loads of different things transpired. But like basically to get the opportunity to captain the club was amazing after being out for so long. But if I look back at the time at Rangers, it was frustrating just because I was there for 3.5 years. 2 of the years I was injured. Didn't really get a run in the team as much as I would have liked, but time moves on, and football's like that. Football's brutal because I was out for 2 years. Obviously, the club signed different players, managers change, and you know, I'm a good professional. I was always dedicated to my craft, so I was always, you know, looked upon favourably in terms of like professional from the coaching staff, and when Le Guin came in, obviously there was a lot of things going on, but I managed to captain the club, which was phenomenal. Great honour, but it was a very strange time, you know, in terms of my career, and frustrating, as I say, tinged with frustration because of how it went.
Just touching on that captaincy thing. Sorry, David, 2 seconds. Just touching on the captain thing. We Donnie in my work, wouldn't forgive me if I didn't mention this to you, mate. He was asking me to say to you, how did it feel at that point? Obviously, Gwen stripped Barry Ferguson of the captaincy. He was asking, how did the dressing room take to that, mate? Did you feel that there was a wee bit of kind of resentment towards you or anything like that, or, you know, taking sides with Barry or that kind of stuff?
Not at all, to be honest. I didn't feel any of that from my fellow players. My players know my character. You know, I also know Baz's character. You know, and Baz and I got on great. There was no issue with the team, with our teammates, and taking sides of that. It was just a strange one because of like the timing and what happened. Obviously, it's obviously controversial to strip Barry of the captaincy and give it to me when I wasn't really playing that much. And you know, Le Guin liked my attitude and liked what I did as a pro, but I wasn't playing, so I totally, you know, understand and empathise with the fans in terms of where it came from, and it was really left field. But in terms of like within the dressing room, no, I definitely didn't feel any pressure from within the dressing room because the boys were great. The boys were great, and I got on great with the boys, and I've always done that with all the teams I've been at. So it was just a strange time, to be honest. It was a really strange time of what was happening, and yeah, we get through it and you crack on.
How was your time under Le Guin? Because obviously you had a dodgy season, not just you. I'm talking about the full squad, but you could go to Italy and beat Livorno, but then it just didn't happen in the league.
Yeah, it was a really strange season, you know. I'd sort of been through it, like we touched on with the Benitez, in terms of a new culture coming in and coaching culture. And again, Le Guen and his coaching staff, a different culture from the French league, and really different to what everyone was used to previously with McLeish and all that sort of stuff. So, but I'd sort of been through that, so I could sort of navigate that pretty well. But in terms of like the biggest issue, and it's the same all the time at a huge club at Rangers, if you don't get results, there's always going to be pressure. So, we just didn't get results in the league. There was a massive turnover of players. Loads of new players come in. So when the new players come in and we don't get the results, then there's pressure. European games we did okay, but obviously our bread and butter is the league, and we weren't getting the results, and it was difficult. So pressure grows, and then things come to head around December, January time, and then he sort of moves on. But yeah, no, it was just very, very strange time in terms of when he was there.
Yeah. Did you notice a difference in training? See, when you moved to Dundee, all with the amazing players and stuff like that, even going to Rangers, did you notice a big change in the training?
Oh, definitely. I mean, I suppose it's the same everywhere. When no disrespect to Dundee, but when you're going into a club like Rangers, where every player is pretty much an international, the standard goes up, the quality goes up, and you need to be at it every day. And if you're not at it every day in training, in games, then you're going to get left out and found out. So you basically have to step up. And I enjoyed that challenge and felt I was doing well. But again, like I say, got a couple of injuries, but just being around the quality and the players and what they'd done previously in their careers, and now we were teammates at Rangers. It was amazing. But really, really tough for sure.
I've always wanted to ask someone who's played with Celtic or Rangers that how can you deal with the scrutiny, because it's like the media's on you a lot more than obviously when you were in Dundee. The fans, the expectations are so high. Like, how can you deal with that on a day-to-day basis type thing? I think I would lose my mind, to be honest. I struggle with my work.
You know what? It is tough. When you go, and I think just the high profile of clubs like Celtic and Rangers, like huge global clubs in the world, and they're in a small country like Scotland where everyone's football daft. There's national papers every day reading, so many articles about the clubs, both the clubs. It's tough. You need to get used to it really quickly. After the left Rangers, I went down to Cardiff. There's one sort of local paper. There's obviously the rugby as well. So there's shift of focus. Whereas in Scotland, it's just like two massive clubs. Everyone loves football. Everyone's football mad. All the press love it. So it's tough. You've got to be on your toes. As a player, got to watch what you say. I wasn't. Social media wasn't that big at that point. So it's obviously huge now, so I can imagine that's even harder. But it was more just about the press, and you got to watch what you say, but you obviously want to make sure you get across and how much you're enjoying it as well. But it's tough. It's really tough to get used to, and you have to get used to it really quickly.
So just before we move on to Cardiff, mate, you made your Scotland debut in 2001 against Poland. It was Craig Brown that gave you the call up. Is that right?
That's right. Yeah. So I was in Poland. I think it was 23. So it came quite quickly. Quite a really quick progression. But obviously amazing to make my debut.
Yeah. How did that feel to come on for your country and that? Then did you enjoy that?
Incredible. Yeah. I'd like I sort of touched on before, like all my sort of peers and that had played with all Scotland all age groups and schools and the Scotland schoolboys and that. I never did any of that. And I sort of went straight to 21. So Scotland 21s, I think I played 6 times, scored 1 goal, and then pretty quickly was in the first the national team, basically the first grade. So it came about quite quickly. I think in that time it was sort of transitional period. I think Colin Henry, Colin Calderwood, there was loads of people sort of moving on from the national team, and Craig Brown was keen to blood some youngsters. I'd been playing every week in the Prem and doing well, so he gave me a call up, and it was an amazing time, and just an amazing experience to be part of that for sure.
How is Craig Brown as a manager? Because you hear some stories, but don't hear a lot, really.
Yeah, no, really good. Incredibly knowledgeable, really tactically astute, but also like quite like really friendly and really easy to get on with, and obviously you want to do well for him. He was great to me throughout my career, and obviously I signed for Aberdeen with him, in the later stages of my career. But he was always great with me, and I think it sort of gets overlooked how well he done with the national team. So to be part of that squad towards the end of his time was just class, yeah.
He ended up getting 14 caps. He played under Betty Votes as well.
I did.
What was that one like?
Interesting. Yeah, again, totally different character. Again, different culture. Actually, like again, it's tricky because it sort of there was up and down periods with Bertie, but I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed his training. Obviously, Tommy Burns was there as well, and I really enjoyed his training. I really enjoyed being around the group. He was a colourful character himself, but he was always good to me. And that's kind of, you always think, if someone treats you well, you respect him and you enjoy it. So I had really good, fond memories of playing with Scotland when he was there.
Definitely. You went to Cardiff, like you said, in 2007. Was that like a breath of fresh air, like you're saying with your injuries and stuff like that, just to kind of maybe get away from Scotland and try something different? Was that your train of thought, maybe?
Definitely. I'd been in Scotland my whole career. I'd went to a huge club like Rangers, didn't go particularly well in terms of as much as how I would have liked it to have went, of course. And then it sort of came to the end of my contract. I had the option to stay, but I just thought I needed a bit of a clean break, a bit of a freshness. Go and see a new league, new clubs, new stadiums, all that types of thing. And I had the chance to go to like Norwich or Cardiff, and ended up in Cardiff. And it turned out to be a really good decision. I was there for 4 years and had a blast. And just getting back playing was the most important. The first year, obviously, I played like 55 games, the most in the club. So it was sort of validation for just being back playing and being fit. So I really enjoyed it.
You became captain pretty much quickly, straight away. It was like 2-1 home, 1 to Burnley.
Yeah. No, I played. I wasn't. I wouldn't say I was the captain weekly, but every time, if Steve McPhail, who was the captain, if he wasn't playing, then I was the captain. So I was vice captain and captained him a good few times. And I played at the old Ninian Park before we moved to the new stadium. So very fond memories of Cardiff. It was a great club.
You ended up getting to the FA Cup final.
Yeah.
In 2008. How was it playing in the most famous stadium probably in Britain, Wembley? How was that?
Yeah. No, it was amazing. We played the semi-final at Wembley as well. So FA Cup semi-finals were at Wembley at that point. I think they maybe still are, but Barnsley had put out Liverpool and Chelsea, and then we got them in the semi, and we toughed them out. So it was interesting, but that's actually probably the best game of my career, the semi-final, and to get through the semi, knowing that you've got the FA Cup final coming up, was amazing. It was we were still in the Championship at that time. Getting to an FA Cup final was kind of unheard of. It was, again, the build-up was amazing. As it sort of touched on, and played in the Scottish, Youth Cup final and the Scottish Cup final. So to get the chance to play in the English FA Cup final was good. It was my first year in England as well. So again, looking back on it, really lucky to do so.
A real pinch me moment type of thing.
Definitely. I had loads of family coming down from Aberdeen and from all over Scotland, and when you walk out of Wembley and there's I think it was 90,000 people there. It was they do the national anthems and you meet people and greet them before the game, and it was one I didn't really used to get nervous before many games, but that was one where it was just realising how big a game it was and how big an occasion. unfortunately, again, we lost 1-0, same as the Scottish Cup final. But yeah, when I look back on it and being involved in those types of games, it's definitely something to cherish for sure.
It was a pretty tight game. I remember it well, man. It was. Canu scored obviously the win on that, but it was a close match.
It was, and we had chances before that. And, we actually played pretty well. We didn't play amazingly, but we played pretty well. But if you look back at their team, their team was incredible. It was actually ridiculous. They had David James, Peter Crouch, Canu, Glenn Johnson, Saul Campbell, Distan, Nico Crancher, Lasana Diarra. I mean, their team was ridiculous. It was a top team. So, we ran them close, but we just didn't have enough.
You had some good players on your team as well, though. Jimmy Floyd Hasselbank, Joel Ledley, Peter Whitty. You know what I mean? It was really good. It was a good team you said as well. Yeah, no, we had the names you mentioned. We had Trevor Sinclair as well. We had Robbie Fowler was on the bench. With Glenn Luvens, Roger Johnson, Peter Encombe was in goals, Kevin McNaughton. We had a top team as well, but unfortunately, we just didn't manage to get it over the line.
Right. How long was it you spent with Cardiff? Was that until 2011?
Yeah, 4 years. 4 years I was there, yeah.
That was just before you went in the Premier League then? Because I was going to ask
that. Just before, that's right.
But after that, you came back up to Scotland. Was that more of not a homesickness, but a kind of you want to go back home now because you've played down in England, you just kind of want to get back up the road?
To be fair, I was there for 4 years. I had the opportunity to stay down in England at sort of lesser clubs than Cardiff and in lower leagues. And, my wife's Australian and we were always thinking about going to Australia. So I was thinking, do I go at that point or do we move back up the road? Our kids had been born in Cardiff, so we weren't sure if we were going to go, give my mum and dad, the kids' grandparents, an opportunity to see them before we left to go to Australia. So it's sort of, that's kind of how it transpired, and I ended up moving back up the road to Dundee. I only played 12 games, scored 4 goals, and then got moved to Aberdeen. So it sort of worked out really well. But it was an interesting time in my career because I was getting on a bit. I'd been in England, obviously down in Wales and in England for 4 years, and it was just thinking about what was next. So just trying to make the right decision and get up the road. And when you look back on it, how things work out, I'm obviously appreciative of how it worked out, but it's always during that moment you just don't know how it's going to work out, but it actually worked out really well in the end. Got back up to Scotland, up to Dundee, and it went well, and then moved back home to Aberdeen. So my parents got to see the kids a lot, and my family as well. So it worked out really well.
Was it right that you had the chance to go back to Aberdeen straight away after Cardiff?
It was. So I was speaking to Craig Brown at the moment. He was the manager with Archie, and then I think before they realised I was available, they'd sort of made an offer to someone, and it was basically if that person takes the offer, then they've got no budget left, and it wasn't going to happen. And I was actually flying back to Scotland when Craig Brown called me and basically says, "Listen, the other player's taking the deal, so there's nothing we can do at this point." So, as a player, you're devastated because you just don't know what's going to happen. So I was gutted, but Craig Brown was always really upfront and honest, so I appreciated that as well. But yeah, you just trepidation in terms of what's next. So luckily it all worked out. And Barry Smith was the manager at Dundee, and he says, "Well, just come back to Dundee and then do well, and I'm sure you'll get a move from that." And that's kind of how it transpired.
I was going to ask, how is it to play in your hometown, basically your club? Was that the club you supported?
It was, yeah. When I was growing up, obviously Aberdeen were flying, so I stayed about 10 minutes from the stadium, so it was always the club my dad would take me to go and watch. So it was amazing to get there. Eventually, I trained with him, when I was younger, but never got offered to sign schoolboys. Trained with him a couple of times and just never thought it was going to happen. And even when I was at Dundee, the first time, there was a lot of talk about maybe them being interested. But again, it never came to fruition. And I just thought that the chance was gone, and that was fine. I was comfortable with that. But yeah, when it actually did come around, it was class.
Aye, I can only imagine. I can only imagine. But you ended up back at Dundee for the third time.
I did.
How did that come about?
Yeah, like I sort of touched on, we were contemplating, going to Australia. We'd always thought about going to Australia and whether I was going to play there or not. Derek McInnes had came in at Aberdeen and he was obviously changing the squad, and I get on really well with Dell, and he was, really honest with me, and he said he would love to keep me, but he was obviously looking to change the squad, and I was older by that point. I'd have been about maybe 35, so I totally understood it. I still got loads of respect for him and what he's done as a manager, so no issue there. But it was one of them where speaking to my wife, and obviously with young kids, do we go now or see what happens? And then literally like a day later, John Brown had called me, who was the manager at Dundee. He says, "Listen, I know you sort of know you're thinking about maybe going to Australia, but why don't you just do one more year? You'll be club captain, come back to the club that you grew up in. They're in the Championship, but we're desperate to get back to the Prem. If we get back to the Prem, you'll have another year." And basically just talked me around like quite quickly. And to be honest, it's probably one of the best decisions I ever made. I loved working with Bomber. The season went well, not so much for him, but in terms of the club and for myself, and getting promotion was just an amazing way to sort of top off my career.
Because that was the final game, wasn't it, when you won promotion?
We won promotion the final game, which, again, when I look back now, it was crazy because, being club captain and getting the opportunity to do so was a long time coming. It was the first and only trophy I won in my career, which is, crazy to say, but I'd played for 20 years, and it was on the final day that I managed to get a trophy. And obviously the other result, was Morton against Hamilton, who Hamilton won 10-2. So we ended up winning 2-1, but if we'd drawn, we wouldn't have got promoted, which is just crazy when you think about it, because we were thinking going into the game, we just need to draw or win or draw, then we're fine. But luckily we won, because if we didn't win, then we wouldn't have got automatic promotion. So crazy way to finish it. But just again, amazing memories.
That sounds like total history, man.
I was just going to ask. Sorry, on you go.
Sorry, I never heard the question. Sorry.
I was just going to ask, how was Bomber as a manager? Was he as cool, calm, as collected as he usually is? Or
you know what, like, Bomber was brilliant. Like, everyone, he's obviously got that not crazy streak, but like pure, like hard streak in him. But he was brilliant to play under, in terms of like training day to day. I expected pre-season was going to be tough as anything. He was brilliant. It was all football based. He sort of like his methods had sort of kept up with the times, and I think if you ask any of the boys that played at that time, we had a really good squad, but they would have loved the training and they would have loved being part of it. Unfortunately, he didn't stay around, and the club decided to change, like sort of around towards Christmas or just after, I think it was. But the boys that were there with him at that time, and truly appreciated what he'd done for us. I texted him, the day we won the title. I texted him just as thanks for bringing me back, and obviously gutted you couldn't be here to be part of it. But I seen Bomber about 6 months ago in Dundee. We were doing an event, and I've still got loads of time for Bomber and what he'd done for me and what he'd done for the club at that time. It was huge.
Aye, you ended up eventually going to Australia.
Yeah.
Is it Haku?
Hakoa, yeah.
Aye, I've tried my hardest. I can.
Yeah, no, good effort.
You ended up there for 4 years. How was the standard? Obviously, you've played in England, you played in Scotland, but how was the standard in Australia compared to Britain as a whole?
I mean, I don't think it's as high. It's just a much smaller population. Football's not the main sport in Australia. It's the most participated sport in Australia, but it's not like the main sport in terms of the media. So it's a little bit lower down. But I played semi-pro. I was coaching and managing and playing semi-pro, so training 2 nights a week and playing in the weekend. I absolutely loved it. It was perfect for me at the time in my career. I was working and doing that semi-pro. Totally loved it. there's some incredible players in Australia in terms of technical players. There's players from all over the world. You got the South Americans, obviously the Brazilians. You got people from Eastern European that go there. They've been there for years. There's really technical players. So it was a really good sort of enjoyable time to play, especially where I was in terms of my career. It was ideal for me at that point. I think if I was still, aspiring to be full time, I probably wouldn't have enjoyed it as that much. But it was, I was later on in my career, happy just to still continue to be training and playing. And it went well. We had a really good club. Had a good couple of runs in the cup and got promoted and stuff. So great time and great way to sort of sign off playing football, basically.
You end up going to manage Corey Hakoa later on, mate. So how was your first stint as a manager, mate?
It was good. It was a massive learning curve. It's having to deal with even Hakoa had you got the board, you got the technical. I was technical director for the club, so initiating and implementing how training was delivered for the whole club from seniors all the way down to under. I think they started at under 9s maybe. So all the way down, you've got the coaching philosophies. You're dealing with budgets. We had to rent our ground, so that comes out of the playing budget. So you're up against teams that have got huge budgets. So just dealing with all that, it's a massive learning curve. Really enjoyable. It's practically like a full-time job alongside, obviously, I was working as well. So great fun, great steep learning curve, really good experience. I loved it, and I'm still in touch with the guys there now, for sure.
You coached, I'm not even going to announce this other thing, but you went in the coaching again.
Right on there. Right on there.
Line. Yeah.
Just a wee test, isn't it?
Yeah. They're a bit further out, from where I lived. Lower division club, but real good sort of aspirations to get up. Really good backing in terms of budgets and stuff. So it was like a project to do, and I'd done it. We really enjoyed it. So myself and my assistant coach Neil Jablonski, who actually played with me at Dundee, he's actually based in Australia, but he was in the youth team at Dundee. So we kept in touch, and he was my assistant coach. Really, everyone was going really well, and then sort of COVID hit, and then I sort of just not lost the love for it, but certainly my kids were getting older, so I basically become the taxi driver for them to drive them to their training. So I really couldn't coach as much as what I'd have liked. So that's kind of why I stepped away from it.
Aye. Well, you won the 3 championship in the Premiership double. How was that? The winning cups as a manager, was it the same as a player, or was it even more better because you put so much work and time in it?
You know what? It's a good question. I probably enjoyed it more, to be honest. There's a lot of, as a player, you can dip in, you play your game, and then your game finishes, and you're sort of done. Whereas a manager, you've obviously got to coach the game, you've got to coach the training, you've got to deal with the club. So the whole thing it's a lot to do there. So when you do get success as a coach, I think you really appreciate it. Obviously you'd love to be doing it as a player, but I think you'd really appreciate it more when you're a coach, just because of how much effort goes into it, and you see the sort of whole picture as opposed to just the game. So yeah, no, it was great. It was really enjoyable time, and again, really good experiences to learn from and take forward, and not just in football but in life and in dealing with people and budgets and all the stuff that comes with it. And it was great. I really enjoyed it.
So Gavin, what is it you're up to these days, mate, and what's brought you back to the UK?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. So back to the UK, a couple of reasons. So family has been a big part. A lot of our family, some of even the people who are in Australia moved back to the UK. So they were sort of split between the two, and so that was one of the reasons. And in football, so I've got 16-year-old twins who are sort of keen to go and do well in football, and the pathway in Australia is difficult. So they've also got British passports. We thought we'd come back and see how they go, and myself personally, I'm actually working in football. So I'd worked in technology and recruitment for a long time, and now I'm actually working in football recruitment. So I help clubs, hire, sporting directors, heads of medical, head physios, And I sort of, when I left to go to Australia, I'd sort of stepped away from football for a long time, and the opportunity to come back and do that was something I was really keen to do. So that's basically what I'm doing just now, and I'm really enjoying it. I've only been back maybe 11 months or nearly a year now. We're in Manchester, loads of clubs around here. The kids are playing football here, just local and progressing. So that's basically what brought us back.
Obviously, you're enjoying what you're doing just now, as you say, mate. But have you got any aspirations to get back into management, maybe up here or something? That's something I would like to see, to be honest with you.
Maybe, you never say never. I think the fact that I moved away for a while would maybe hamper me in terms of getting an opportunity. If an opportunity came up, I'd love to do it. But I think I knew when I moved to Australia that, I was sort of had to make sort of new opportunities in Australia. Whereas I think if I'd stayed in Scotland or the UK, I would have maybe got an opportunity to try be a manager or a coach. But I sort of knew that when I was moving away, it was going to be difficult to do so. But now that I'm back, you never say never. I'd love to. You always love to test yourself and be, around it. I love football, obviously. It's been my life since I grew up. So I've got lots of friends who are, doing it full time, coaching and in the game and managing. So, I never say never, but we'll sort of see if that opportunity arises. But I'd love to test myself against some other coaches and teams for sure.
Yeah, get yourself back up there, man. Get yourself a club.
Would it be a number one, or would you go back as somebody's assistant?
You know what? It's a really good question. I think what I've learned over time is, as much as I like being an assistant and doing the training sessions, I actually prefer the management more. So the team management, the people management, dealing with the board and above. I actually probably enjoy that more than actually being on the field coaching. I enjoy on the field coaching, and I can do it obviously, but I think there's better people than that do that than me. Whereas I like to, if I probably zoom out and look at the bigger picture, that's probably what I prefer to do. And what I've sort of realised over time is probably more akin to my skills. So I probably wouldn't. I'm not saying I wouldn't go in as assistant to get my foot in the door, but I think if you were asking me if it's more of a on the field coaching or actual team management, definitely team management is probably more what I would look to do.
Before we wrap things up, mate, I wanted to ask you about the teams that you used to play for, how they are currently. Unfortunately, well, I say unfortunately, but Rangers are not doing too well. Cardiff and Dundee. Dundee are obviously fighting not to be relegated at the moment.
Yeah.
And Cardiff have been relegated, mate. It's a bit of a shame for Cardiff, eh?
Massive shame. I was actually down in Cardiff on Friday, so I played in a charity game at the stadium on Friday. It's the first time I've been back for a while. And it was in a fundraiser for the club doctor at the time. His daughter sadly passed away, and it was a fundraiser for her. So all the sort of old boys came back, and we played at Cardiff. And it's such a shame to see where it's at the moment. It's a really competitive league. My nephew actually plays at Cardiff at the moment, so I've watched nearly every game this season. It's been, I'm not going to say a long time coming. There's been challenges over the last few years, and if it's a really competitive league and you don't set your squad up probably as well as what it could have been, it's always going to be difficult. So been a challenging year for Cardiff for sure, but I'm sure they'll bounce back, and they've definitely got things in place to do so, as far as I'm aware and what I'm hearing, which is good. Dundee always going to be tough to stay in the division. I think they should definitely be in the Premiership, but it's always going to be tough in terms of budgets and players. I think the Doc's done really well, and over the years he's been there. They play some really good football. I watch a lot of the games. I really enjoy watching them, but they just need to make sure they get the results and stay in the division, and can hopefully build from that. Rangers, obviously, it's been a tough season. The European game seems to have been going better than domestic. I'm glad to see Barry and Neil and Griggsy and obviously Dodsley there and try to steady the ship, which is great. But they're going to have to do a lot of changes there in terms of the squad, I think, and how they approach games, and to really go and challenge Celtic, who over the last few years have certainly been the more dominant side, unfortunately. So there's a lot of changes to be made, and to get them back to where they should be. But it's obviously a huge club, and they should be right up there.
I think that's a good place to leave it, mate. So just want to say thanks very much for coming on, Gavin. I already know all about your career anyway, but when I was researching it, I was just looking at it and going, wow, what a career this guy's had. You know, the games you've played in, the experiences you've had, the managers you've played under. It's been terrific, mate, and it's been an absolute joy listening to you talking about it also. Thanks very much, mate, and all the best for the future, Gavin.
No, thank you, and I appreciate having me on as a guest. Thanks.
Well, mate. Thank you.
Mate, thanks.
Cheers, Gavin, mate.
Thanks.
Cheers, mate.